Thank you, JLF, for this wonderful opportunity to moderate this all-star panel. You know, the sort of the best minds on diplomacy, strategy, foreign policy in India and Bangladesh. And over the next 45 minutes, we will have a conversation where we'll explore how there is sort of the Asian drama. There's no dearth of it right now, which is unfolding. And it's great to see a full house, at JLF on a geopolitics panel. Earlier, we used to think when we started our careers that it was an esoteric exercise only for the intellectual elite. But it's great to see on a Saturday afternoon, it's a full house here at Batak. So, so the way in Asia, right now, there is no dearth of drama, as we all know. And it is witnessing widespread turmoil. And so in India's neighborhood, we are seeing widespread protests, leaders beaten up, protesters storming into residences, offices, homes of their leaders, leaders fleeing their countries, and governments collapsing, and in some cases, anti-India sentiment as well. Dr. C. Mohan, you've just come out with your new book. It's called India and Rebalancing of Asia. I would recommend, it's a fascinating assessment of where India is and trying to rebalance its challenges. So you talk about India's Asian challenges in your book. If you could tell us about what are the challenges you see that stand out for India?
Thank you, Shubhajit. Wonderful to be here, all of you, this afternoon. My book is essentially about how India's economic growth over the last 3.5 decades, what strategic consequences has that growth has had, and what are the continuing limitations on India's ability to shape the balance of power in Asia. So that's basically the thesis. And I think there are 5 factors, I'll highlight, which some gains, but there's still, India has a long way to go before it becomes a decisive player in shaping Asia's geopolitical destiny. First, I think, is about military strength. Now, there's saying, the Chinese have a saying, rich country, strong army. That is, if you're rich, you're capable of spending more on defense and creating capabilities. Well, India has grown, its military has grown, but it is growing in the shadow of Chinese military power, Chinese military modernization, and the kind of Chinese doctrine that it has developed. And then China-Pakistan relationship limits actually what India can do militarily in the neighborhood. For example, you have Pakistan is talking about selling JF-17 aircraft, but India has not been able to sell a single aircraft because that takes you back to your problem. India's domestic defense production, its ability to export that remains significantly limited. A second constraint, I think, on India is the regional economic integration. Free trade is a big issue today, but India, unfortunately, is not part of any major free trade arrangement within Asia. We walked out of RCEP, which is an Asia-wide institution. SAARC has never been able to get there. So therefore, how does India strengthen its economic position by integrating with the rest of the region? And at a time when China is already integrating with Asia, for example, ASEAN's trade with China, for example, $1 trillion, that is $1,000 billion, while India's trade is barely $150 billion. It tells you the scale of integration and India not being part of it. Third problem, I think, is regional institutions. India, again, is not part of any regional institution, and therefore that weakens India. SAARC is going nowhere. We tried to create an alternative in BIMSTEC, but they have a saying in Punjabi, which is, look, you can't be a fool in Lahore and be a genius in Peshawar. That is, your same problems that limit our regional integration in South Asia also limit your possibilities of building other institutions like BIMSTEC. Therefore, the problem of regional integration remains one. The fourth issue, I think, is really the whole question of India's regional policy. That is, we have difficult relations. I think this is an understatement of the year. I'm sure Riaz is going to talk about India, Bangladesh. Over the last decade, India's difficulties with its neighbors have actually grown. And I think if we don't repair that, that is, if you keep fighting with your neighbors, that's the surest way outside powers can intervene. We saw that in the Ops Indoor, both China and the United States intervening and creating even more complications for India. And finally, I would say the domestic situation. I think a country's strength ultimately relies on internal cohesion. The stronger you are at home, the more united you are at home, your ability to deal with the rest of the world improves. This, again, they teach us in the school book, united, you rise, and divided, you fall. I think the rise of internal challenges, internal divisions, internal polarization is going to be a big problem. And I think unless we fix that, how much economic strength you might have, how much military strength you might have, your ability to impact on the world will be limited. So therefore, I think overcoming these limitations is critical for India to be able to shape a different kind of Asia.
Thank you. Thank you for framing this conversation so well. High Commissioner Hamidullah, India-Bangladesh relationship is going through a real challenging time, as Dr. Raja Mohan just mentioned. And, it's been almost after 2 decades of relative calm and sort of stability. At that point of time, the phrase used was golden chapter, Shonali Odhyay. And it seems that in the last year or so, that has faced a challenge. You are Bangladesh's High Commissioner to India. How do you see this moment of concerns, instability in the relationship?
I understand that for me, 9 months being in Delhi and navigating the spaces multiple, I would recognize that yes, we are going through some issues, difficulties one may characterize as challenges, but I would think this is a phase in transition, and I would look at whatever one may characterize as challenges as opportunities, and I mean that. What is coming through, we are looking forward to an election, 12 Feb, and from there we step into a new democratic polity. Essentially in question or at the center are fulfillment of aspirations. I would characterize 3 things in the middle: democracy, demography, and development. Let's understand that we are talking of a demography where very little understood that below 35 are 52.2% population to be exact. Many often when I speak in Delhi, we don't realize that in 1972, if there were 6 or 7% of Bangladesh population living in urban space, today it's 42 or plus. Or by 2030, half of the Bangladesh population, meaning very urban. And digitization. These 3 intersections bring people coming with very different intersection, and at the center are their aspirations of the fulfillment or articulation of that. That's where what I would look forward is beyond prognosis to see that how we create spaces and conversations in shared interest. Obviously, I have my selfish interest, which are my national interest, Shubhajit, India's national interest. But then at the middle, it's very much possible, as like every other country, including I look at Ambassador Navtej Sarna, our shared space, shared interests. And then how do we, that's not going to be static, that will move. That's a continuum. And let's recognize that continuum where what Bangladesh looks forward, and it's very much possible to engage, begin anew the conversations or interactions, collaboration based on mutual trust and respect, benefit sharing, and what people are saying, dignity. And more I hear what's coming out from Bangladesh, it's very much possible. It's not something, and that's also getting recognition. And also I look at Dr. Rajamohan, we have had conversations with many of his likes, that's already, there's a recognition, appreciation, and understanding, and possibly some new calibration with which we look forward to beginning.
New calibration to a beginning. I mean, but there's a concern in India that, in many sections about the plight or the safety of Hindu minority community in Bangladesh. You faced protests from the streets outside the High Commission. You've also faced Indian government expressing those concerns. How do you, I mean, in this kind of a climate, how do you assuage those concerns?
I think at any point, what is important is to understand whether a society in question and a state consequently, how does it recognize the rights, articulation of the rights, grant it and fulfill those rights to everyone, irrespective of religion or any other distinction. In this case, I can assure you, and it's not that whatever all the incidents that are being reported are very swiftly acted upon by the state. I think that should be the question. And the other point is that every incident as it has occurred has been quickly gone into detail. The society has responded very importantly. If you look at, anyone looks at the press and media in Bangladesh, there has been no distinction in identifying whether it has happened involving someone and what is his identity. We have looked at very clearly, there are many, we have looked at all the single-digit cases which are in the last 1.5 months or 2 months. And each or most of it has come around centering civil discord or land grabbing, extortion and such. And the state as such has made no mercy on nabbing them, putting them under law very fearlessly. And there has been society-wide responses without any distinction. Bangladesh was founded, I can assure you, not having any distinction, recognition thereof in terms of majority or minority, and that remains, that shall remain. There should not be any doubt whatsoever. So whatever is traveling to beyond borders, please rest assured, and I'm not here only to assure, but for real, that these are stray incidents and something that the population of Bangladesh, for people of Bangladesh, condemns in full. These are not related to any pattern whatsoever.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for those, reassuring sort of words. Navtej, you were, let me zoom out a bit with you. You were India's ambassador to the US in Trump administration, the first term. So you are the closest that we know who understands President Trump. So I want to ask you, when it comes to Trump's approach towards Asia, especially because of the Indo-Pacific strategy in the first term was very pronounced in the national security strategy. This time we see a certain recalibration towards the Indo-Pacific. Do you get that sense? What is your sense of Trump 2.0, since you know Mr. Trump so well?
Thank you. Thank you, Shubhajit. I'm very glad to be here, but I'm very burdened by the responsibility that you have put upon me to try and understand Mr. Trump or to claim to know him well. So I must say that, like they say in the beginning of books, that all characters in this book are fictional. This introduction is also quite fictional. Nevertheless, it is a fact that I was there in Trump 1.0, at least for 2 years and some. And we did see a very clear policy emerging towards the end of 2017 about the Indo-Pacific. The Asia-Pacific, which was the old Cold War construct, was changed to Indo-Pacific. And it was seen as a kind of framework, a paradigm on which a free and open Indo-Pacific, beyond the military, beyond the defense, would be constructed. And India had a very important place in that paradigm. They said that we want this Indo-Pacific to extend from Hollywood to Bollywood. And we said, no, we wanted to go beyond Bollywood. We wanted to go up to eastern shores of Africa. And that ultimately happened. But because this is the area which is going to be the major strategic area, commerce, technology, defense, security, maritime, everything, this is going to be the focus, the heart of the strategic landscape. So there was a clear strategy, and there was a very clear approach by the American allies in the Pacific, particularly Japan and South Korea and Australia, to build relations with Trump. And the advantage that time was that they had quite an effective Trump whisperer, which was Abe, Shinzo Abe. And he got in very early into Trump, and he developed a very good a relationship. Now in Trump 2.0, everywhere, and particularly here, things are very muddled. I'll just give you one or two examples. There doesn't seem to be a clear focus on the Indo-Pacific. The clear recognition of China as a strategic rival has now been watered down to kind of an economic competitor. So there's a far more benign approach to China, which can even go further in the next year when Trump goes to China in April and this year now, and possibly has 2 or 3 other meetings with President Xi. The second thing is that he is not seeing this as an entire grouping. He is focused, and this was clear in his visit to the region, he is focused on bilateral approaches, transactional bilateral approaches with ROK, with Japan, with Australia, and of course we know with India, and also with countries of the ASEAN. So that overall approach of approaching a region and working a policy to the region is not happening. For instance, the transactional approach is that you guys must contribute more burden sharing, more defense spending, more investment in America. So during that visit, he garnered $850 billion from Japan and Korea as promised investments in semiconductors, in pharmaceuticals, in critical rare earth refining, and he made deals with Australia and so on. So it's not clear as to what's going to happen to the Indo-Pacific in terms of a policy. There are going to be bilateral transactions. What happens on Taiwan, we still don't know. And what happens to Quad, where it pinches India, I think that entire thing at the moment is in grave doubt. And if you want me to explain that now, I can. Otherwise, I can come back to it. Depends on your time.
Yeah. I'll come back to you.
Yeah. Sure.
Suhasini, Suhasini, you have written on India-China relations for almost 3 decades now, and you're also working on a project on India's neighborhood. In India's neighborhood, near neighborhood, why is there a sense that China is stealing a march in India's neighborhood?
Well, I think it's just looking at the facts. The truth is that we periodically have, the session is called Asian drama. I would say it's South Asian drama. I'd even say it's South Asian soap opera. But our region periodically in its desire to grow has seen changes, has seen clashes within the region as well over time. If you were to look at the 1990s and compare them to more recent times, you would see a real difference in how China is looking at South Asia. In the 1990s, if you like, we saw a kind of Indian blockade on Nepal's borders. And Nepali delegation went to Beijing and said that we are looking for help. We want support because, there is an economic blockade and food is not able to come in. The response from Beijing at the time was very clearly, We can help you, we can send you aid, we can send you, food, whatever you need. But your problems with India are your regional problems. It's your region that you have to sort out. By 2015, 2016, where we saw another blockade on Nepal, for example, the Chinese reaction was very different. It suddenly produced an 8-point framework agreement on infrastructure. They offered Nepal land ports, dry ports as they're called, access to the seas through China, opening up the border and building trade facilities and infrastructure at the border between Nepal and China. A lot had changed. There was this train that was now bringing people, hundreds of thousands of people every year to the borders in Tibet. So we saw this shift happen. India deals with China at 3 peripheries. It's not just the direct India-China bilateral. There's the line of actual control, a 3,000-kilometer boundary, and of course in the last few years that's been at the top of everyone's mind. There is the maritime sphere, and of course through the Indo-Pacific we're seeing a little more of that. Chinese ships in the Indian Ocean, for example, and submarines that we are also seeing much more of. But most importantly, we're seeing China in India's region. Now, this is a region which, honestly speaking, we are even scared to describe as South Asia. In India,
is China encircling India?
I think China is dealing, as it feels like, with India's neighbors, and no longer is constrained by the idea that this is India's neighborhood. So when you hear of a poverty alleviation, get-together, which has most South Asian countries apart from India and Bhutan, you have to think that China is working towards a South Asia where India may or may not be a participant. If you look, for example, and this is not meant as a criticism, every country does what they think is in their national interest. My question is, what are we doing? And is it not in our national interest to do more as a region, to do more situating ourselves in this region? If you looked in 2008 on 4 different parameters, whether it was trade, whether it was aid and investment, I'll say 5 parameters, trade, aid, investment, tourists and students, India outranked China with most of our neighbors. Let's take Pakistan out of that equation because that's an unusual commodity. But India outranked China on each of those parameters. By 2018, India was seen as the laggard in that equation. So these are opportunities for us to take. When the US behaves as it does, when China behaves as it does India have so many choices when it comes to the big players? No. But where we do have choices is in bettering our understanding of our region. Unfortunately, and I'll stop there, we have created this idea, this myth of India that exists as a kind of a unique flower in this region with a ring of fire around it. And therefore, India only looks, eastward. If we look first at Singapore or Southeast Asia. If we look westward, we look at the Gulf, or we look further on to Europe and the US. How much are we situating ourselves in the region we actually exist in?
Right. Excellent points. Dr. Rajamohan, I want to take you to Trump administration because they are a huge factor in, and their rapprochement or engagement with China, should that worry India?
No, I think any relationship between the world's major powers, that is US, China, Russia, if they change, for good or bad, will have an effect on everyone else. So I think that is a given in international politics. If the great power politics changes, how they relate to each other changes, will have a direct effect on everyone else. So the task for us, I think, is not to come to a priori conclusions. To say that, look, if China is sitting on a territory, but we're talking to the Chinese. So the notion that Americans should not do anything with China, when they have a trade is more than $1 trillion, or the linkages between the two societies is deep. So I think we must expect US and China will have some engagement. The question for us is, are the US and China, to use an old phrase, are the contradictions between them disappeared? No. Whether you call it G2, whether we call it a duopoly, you call it a condominium, I think the US and China have problems. The question for us is, how do we strengthen ourselves to insulate from potential changes in the US-China relationship, rather than every night worrying about, oh my God, they're getting together. Sometimes we worry they're fighting and they'll drag us into the war. This thing called entrapment. Sometimes you feel, oh my God, they're going to abandon us, Americans, the abandonment idea. Therefore, I think as a big nation, we say we are the fourth largest, fifth largest, whatever it is, third largest army. So it's important to watch what others are doing, important to understand what's going on between them. But the answer is always internal. That is, if we are strong enough, if we have a big enough market, if we have strong enough technological growth, we should be able to leverage that to insulate the potential shifts between US and China or US and Russia. A lot of people would love to see US and Russia improve relations. But we don't like Russia and China getting too close. But this is a game we have to follow, and that's a job we pay the diplomats for, and I hope they're doing a good job.
That's why I'm coming to Navtej next. So one of the pressing questions is the Iran protests right now. And in Asia, I think that is the thing to watch out for. And so the simple question in everyone's mind in this room, in this hall is, will Trump use military options in Iran?
Well, that's a good question, and I don't think you're getting an answer to that. Because I think last night or yesterday, Mr. Trump said, no, it's okay, they're not too bad, they're not killing too many people, it's okay. Somebody said that's a phenomenon of taco, Trump always chickens out. But the point is that he has been speaking ever since December 28. And he's sort of been ratcheting it up. He said things like, we are locked and loaded. They've crossed a red line. If they kill more people, we have strong options. We are ready to come and help. So he made gave this signaling. Whether it was signaling, whether it was just to cause confusion, we'll never know, because he is what he is. He did similar things before the 12-day war with Israel and Iran, before the bombing. He gave all sorts of signals before Venezuela. So we don't know. But there are a couple of things that the US is in a mode in which it wants to intervene, wherever. So Trump, the reality TV host, which he essentially is enjoying playing commander-in-chief. He's enjoyed the success of Venezuela. And he'd like to have, but what kind of success? He wants where people are not killed. I mean, Americans are not killed. There's a show of efficient, raw power. And there's a victory at the end of it, that I did this. So that's what's tempting him. What's stopping him is that it's not sure that this will be a victory. We don't know, because Iran is not Venezuela. It's a country of 90 million people. It's a huge country. It's a distant country. And while they're moving the USS Abraham Lincoln, the nuclear aircraft carrier, from the South China Sea towards the Gulf, it's not there yet. So what are they going to do? Are they going to do regime change from the air? Are they going to do it with cruise missiles? Are they going to kill only Mr. Khamenei? Are they going to damage the IRGC infrastructure? And what is that going to do? Is that going to completely remove the regime? These are all doubtful questions. Will the supreme leader go away and the IRGC take over? Will the army take over? Or will this gentleman sitting in Maryland, Pahlavi, who's speaking very nicely from the safety of Maryland, come in as a transition leader? Now, he was interviewed by the chief editor of Economist yesterday, and she told him that Trump has said, no, they are not killing people. He was absolutely shocked. So, whether he can be a transition leader, I don't think Iran is going back to a monarchy, if they ever change. So I think these are the doubts which are actually stopping Mr. Trump, because he doesn't want to go in and not come out with a victory. So, and there are various other options, cyber attacks and all that, sub-level attacks. So we're not sure what he's going to do, but as of latest, he seems to be easing off, and, the oil prices have fallen consequently. So things are easing off as far as he is concerned. Whether the protesters come back on the streets and what he does now, of course, left to Mr. Netanyahu, Mr. Trump should go in tomorrow.
Hi, Commissioner Hamidullah. This is a provocative question that, do protests in Iran remind you of the protests in Bangladesh? Are there any parallels you see?
See, every people is different. Not only that ours preceded Iran's, but I think ours was very genuine, authentic, and came out of completely different circumstances. Economic decimation, crimes against humanity, criminalization, economic institutions being decayed. That was what it is. Hypothetically speaking, possibly we might not have met with what came up at the end of 36 days as well. So it was basically where the people's rights were disenfranchised. They felt their aspirations were facing roadblock. That's when particularly the younger demography, they stood up, and then others, many who felt across the population, different segments, they felt their rights were robbed and etc. They got together. So, and then let's be mindful that it was a very authentic, non-violent one, where the state machinery apparatus were acting against them, and you have seen all the images and all reported by the international community, rights groups, etc., global press, that it was truly a brutal one. So I don't see any. I think no one would see any comparison between the two.
I am running short of time, so I'll move to questions. But one last thing that I want to ask Suhasini. Trump's this peacemaking initiative and the fact that he claimed credit for the India-Pakistan ceasefire, what could have India done differently to prevent that situation?
It's interesting you ask that, because there is this kind of idea that had India played its cards differently over Operation Sindoor and the US claims of a role in the ceasefire, all of this would not have happened. Trump's attacks on India, on our economy, on the tariffs, on the Russian oil, now on the Iranian trade, on Chabahar, on H-1Bs, on, the list is growing longer. We wake up every morning with one new item on that list. And my sense is no. My sense is that Mr. Trump has come in this second term. He realizes he has a short amount of time to rework global equations to do a power grab over here. Secondly, I think if you go back to May the 10th, to the day of that ceasefire, there are a lot of unanswered questions. By the way, I'm not for a moment saying that it's totally clear what exactly happened. After all, Mr. Trump did tweet our ceasefire had happened half an hour before we did. We spoke about it. I'm not saying that that's a done deal. I'm just saying that at that moment, given the kind of pressure the government was under to even explain how it had come to a ceasefire, at that moment for the government to have said otherwise, which is, i.e., Mr. Trump, thank you so much. That's what's being considered. That Mr. Trump, thank you so much for bringing Pakistan online and getting Pakistan to accept that this is in the best interest to have a ceasefire at this time. I'm not sure the government could have sold that. After all, if you look at what Prime Minister Modi said 2 days later, he was essentially making the case that Pakistan had come to India and asked for the ceasefire. That, in fact, if you read that speech from May the 12th, it's really telling. He says, Pakistan begged us and said, we will never again aggress India's borders and we will never again allow a terrorist attack to happen. I'm not sure any of that has played out in the next few months. I'm just saying that given the political position that the government had taken at that time, I don't think, A, they could have made that decision. I also don't think that everything depended on that. What Mr. Trump is essentially telling us is not just saying, give me the trade deal I want. take back the Indians that I don't want. Stop buying oil from Russia, from Venezuela, from Iran. Now buy oil from Venezuela, but only American oil. We're essentially dealing in fenced goods now, taking oil from Venezuela that the Americans have wanted. What he's essentially saying is do what I want you to. And the question is going to increasingly be in 2026, how far is enough for India?
Yeah, thank you. We'll just move to questions. There are a couple of mics. I see a lot of hands, and we have very short time. My only request is short, sharp questions, no comments, and please ask a question that has not been asked or answered at the panel. So I see the gentleman there, green. Yeah. Yeah, green.
My question is to Navtej sir. So the recent volatility in world order induced by USA, is it a result of long-term diplomacy, like these events were seen like it may happen in the future, or is it just a diversion to cover up something happened in USA domestic level, like Epstein files?
Are you talking of India, US, or all over the place?
No, I'm talking about the world order, not particularly India. What
Well,
happened?
at the moment, there, to keep it very short, at the moment there is no world order. I mean, what existed is completely broken. Your idea of international law, sovereignty, relations between states, all that has been left by the wayside, and we have to see what is going to emerge. Whether it's going to be a climate of geopolitical rivalry or something else a little more sobering. We'll have to see. Yeah.
We'll just club a few questions, 2-3 questions with the blue.
Hi, I am absolutely going to bring in the Northeast, because when we talk of India's geopolitics, Northeast cannot be really overlooked. All the countries that you mentioned, they share physical borders with Northeast. I shall not name the states, but why is Northeast repeatedly getting lost, whether it is in historically infrastructure development or in people-centric policies? Why is it getting lost? Where is looked is policy? Where is act is policy? Why do we always underlook or, oversee the Northeast? Where is it getting lost? I want this answer from any one of you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Gentleman there.
Oh, I have to stand up? I can't give you the mic.
No,
You
no.
can't give me the mic.
Yeah,
Oh,
please.
as Professor Rajamohan used the term insulate, I mean, I personally would have used the word fortify maybe instead of insulating. But anyway, getting to my question, India pumped in a lot of money in the Afghani parliament and et cetera, and then we had to pull out. So is something like that, something similar is going to happen in Chabahar as well? Will we have to again do the same? Because it's pretty uncertain, it seems right now. So what do you think is going to happen?
Yeah. And one more. This. Yeah. Yeah.
Could you contextualize the Asian drama in terms of being part of a great game, or is it more bilateral?
Okay, I think going from backward. Look, I think when the Great Game was a metaphor for rivalry between major powers. The original idea of Great Game was between Great Britain operating out of India, the British Raj, and the Russian Empire. So since then, look, the rivalry between the major powers is a fact of life. Sometimes they're buddies, sometimes they're enemies. I mean, just take US and China. US did not recognize the birth of communist China. Then they became friends against Soviet Russia. Now they're enemies again. So I think, that goes on and on. The question for us, therefore, is how do we make sure we navigate this carefully so that our interests are not affected? So they fortify or insulate. The question is, how strong are you to manage this? I think on Chabahar, or what happened in building in Afghanistan, look, that's what is called risk. You don't control the world beyond your borders. Therefore, that's why risk premiums, now this whole business on risk consultancy, you think all these bankers sitting in Hong Kong, Shanghai, Singapore, they make money on this. So how do you judge risk when you undertake a project? Internally, at least, there is a stable conditions, but externally, I think there are unprecedented. I think one part of being a major power is you got to put your money knowing that there is some risk. You put in money in a Venezuelan oil company, you will find that your returns are not going to happen. So that's part of life. And I think this part of India's growing up. You win some, you lose some, but I think as a major country increasingly into the game of exporting capital, that's part of life, and I think we have to manage it. And I'll just add one point here. Look, I think there is too much attention to Afghanistan and too little to Burma, maybe because we are sitting too close to Delhi. So there is that bias structurally. But I think over the last 30 years, you could say the look east policy, the act east policy, all these talked about bringing Northeast into our larger strategic calculus, the Bay of Bengal. But I don't think we've been fully successful. But I think anything you want to do with China, Southeast Asia, Japan, all that will involve Northeast in one form or the other.
I just want to add on the Northeast. I think one of the reasons is because we have taken now to seeing the Northeast not so much as the states that are part of India, a culture that is interwoven in India, but from a security prism, from the idea that it borders three, and if I dare say, now the third as well is a slightly difficult neighbor. So as long as we see it in terms of the area between China, Myanmar, and Bangladesh, unfortunately, that is the prism we'll see it through, and not the other. And when you talk about the Asian drama, why did I say South Asian soap opera? Just look back to the last few years. Since 2020, and this was the year of COVID, we have seen the Myanmar coup, Afghanistan fall to the Taliban. We've seen Pakistan see those protests and then Imran Khan put in jail. Then we've seen Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Nepal. I mean, literally every part of the region has seen a non-electoral change in government in just this past decade. So I think we have to look closer at what are the reasons for it and how India has to situate itself in and engage with these new realities.
Yeah, we are completely run out of time, but I have just a rapid fire, which I do with all the four, panelists. Just 2 minutes with your microphones. First question, which of India's relations will become better in 2026? Raja?
I think Europe, quite clearly, this month we'll have the whole of the European leadership. Russia is difficult, China, we have problems with the US, new problems. Europe is one place where I think things look like going to improve, and improve pretty fast and pretty significantly.
Yes?
No, I'm not to speak of which is relation, but I can only tell you that, we introspect into future. Future is often fraught with fear, but I would say let's embrace future in terms of fun. But our question issue is how to deal with the unknowns or unknowables. My take would be that let's liberate our relationship, not to quantify, which tends to be the case often, that what is the bilateral trade quantum, etc. But if you want to hear, it's 12 billion at the moment. Past 12 months has seen 10% growth. Let's mark it. And the potential is not at $12 billion. I have done the estimation. Economic interaction is beyond $25 billion. If anyone is interested, we can share. That brings in question that how do we understand and approach and materialize, if not realize, mutuality of interests. And I said about based on the principles, and how do we then take it on mutual interdependence? That is the way forward.
Navtej?
Same questions?
Yeah. Which of India's relations will improve in 2026?
Russia.
Russia. Suhasini?
I'd say 2025 was a year of deep shock, of a lot of relationships unraveling to the point some of us thought we had reached a bottom, in which case the only way is up. So presumably, hopefully, all our relationships.
One more round I want to just play. Which of India's relations will deteriorate? Raja Mohan.
Look, my sense is, I think, given our problems with China, despite the tactical rapprochement, I think managing the relationship with China on the border, on security, in the neighborhood, and on global economic level will continue to test India's ability very, very significantly.
Riaz, you want to?
Not certainly with Bangladesh.
Navtej?
Pakistan.
I would think that our relationship, I fear that our relationship with the US is not going to get better.
Okay. Thank you. That was a fantastic session from great applause for this all-star panel. Thank you so much for joining.